Breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Thursday and Monday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Acadia and Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. Our producer is AJ Fredrickson, does a fantastic job getting us on the air with all the great clips and interviews. And AJ, I got a stat for you here to start us out today.
Yeah, lay it on me.
63.7% of teams starting 2-0 have made the playoffs since 1970. So I guess the Vikings are in already, right?
I love a 2/3 chance. That's almost 100%.
Yeah. So
That's a very interesting stat. I mean, we did this show, the first one, on a Thursday before the season started, and I can't remember if it was you or I, but somebody quoted the baseball verbatim of, you can't lose the division, but you can't win the division in the first month, but you certainly can lose it, right?
sure.
Those first few games are so important, and that stat just shows just how important those first couple of games are. If you go 2-0, and which the Vikings are in a very select group of teams that are, you already set yourself up so much better for the playoffs. You're not playing catch-up. You don't have to have that momentum swing of, okay, guys, we got to rally the troops here already this earlier in the year. No, you're off hot foot. You're hit the ground running, and 2-0 to start the year. Now it's it's definitely not in position of it's their division to lose, but they put themselves in a position where you already upset the 49ers, a team a lot of people expected you to lose pretty handedly to. Now it's talking about, you know what, could they upset the Texans in back-to-back weeks? And I think at home really helps that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that the Vikings are a 3-point dog this week, which is a little surprising to me, considering having just beaten the 49ers and Texans have to go on the road. CJ Stroud has to face that wild Brian Flores defense in his second season. He's a great player, but he hasn't seen a defense like that. Sam Darnold is rolling. Jefferson looks like he's going to play, maybe not Addison. So things are looking positive. But again, Houston's a very, very solid, loaded team in a lot of ways, but they have some injury issues, and so do the Vikings. So that's going to be a big part of this game, is who can play, because Nico Collins, their top receiver, is on the injury list, didn't practice yesterday. Neither did Joe Mixon. Neither did their starting center, Juice Scruggs. The Vikings were missing Jordan Addison, Brian O'Neill, but he'll find a way to play. Dallas Turner, we'll see about his knee. Jefferson, limited, but looks like he's going to play. So, yeah, I think by Sunday's a ways off still, and we will see. But, again, I think the Vikings have set themselves up in a good situation, 2-0. And if they get to 3-0, nobody would have predicted that was going to happen. Maybe for the Texans, perhaps, but not for the Vikings. So this is one of two games this weekend matching teams that are both unbeaten, the Vikings and the Texans, and the LA Chargers at Pittsburgh. Again, Chargers, not necessarily surprising. The early schedule hasn't been that difficult. The Steelers, both those teams having given up very few points. We'll talk about that a little later in the show. But let's start out with hearing, we always love to do after a Vikings win, Kevin O'Connell in the locker room after the game on Sunday.
Round title fight. We talked about it last night. We took some punches, we delivered some blows, backed each other up, whether it was the defense picking us up on a short field, whether it was the offense down some players now, eating up over 6 minutes of clock and going down there with Will the Thrill quickly. Play style is something we are all about. We live it, we breathe it. We just went toe-to-toe for 12 rounds with a team that defines themselves by it. This just kind of feels like everybody gets a game. Round title fight. We talked about it last night. We took some punches, we delivered some blows, backed each other up, whether it was the defense picking us up on a short field, whether it was the offense down.
So KOC, very excited after the game in the locker room. And as the Vikings approach this game with the Texans, I think it's kind of a really fascinating game from the standpoint of a reunion Sunday in a lot of ways. When you look at the Vikings have former Texans, Jonathan Greenard, who was off to a really good start, has a sack and 12 pressures in 2 games as an edge rusher. Blake Cashman had a fantastic game, as we talked about the other day, with 13 tackles, a sack, forced the interception, 4th down stop of Brock Purdy. Shaq Griffin is also kind of the third corner right now, but playing a lot and presumably playing well because we haven't seen him get beat. Yeah. so that's a good thing. And I think that on the other side, obviously the Texans come to town. Danielle Hunter had a great career here, no doubt about it. But he's also maybe hearing from some people that, the Vikings are kind of saying they're okay without him, and with Greenard and Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner, which I think they are okay without Danielle.
I think so.
But perhaps Danielle may want to kind of show a few people what he's made of, and he's coming off a big game against the Bears where on Sunday night they pulverized Caleb Williams, 7 sacks, 11 quarterback hits. Now, Caleb Williams held the ball too long in a lot of instances. His offensive line playing very badly. The Vikings' offensive line much better. So, but it sets up an interesting matchup there. You got Danielle Hunter, former Viking star, Stephon Diggs, former Viking mercurial receiver, and
very, very wise choice of words there.
And half author of the Minneapolis Miracle, but obviously was a great player here before he was traded to Buffalo and then talked his way out of Buffalo to Houston. And then you got Chris Boyd and Cam Akers, former Vikings too. So a lot of interesting storylines on that reunion side. But ultimately, you get back to the quarterbacks in this game. CJ Stroud, Offensive Rookie of the Year last year, off to another really good start. Sam Darnold, Revival Player of the Year right now. Comeback Player of the Year, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And Sam Darnold's ranking 5th in QB rating right now, over 111. Right behind him is Stroud at 104.9. So kind of an interesting matchup with those guys going against the 2 teams that are the leading pass rushing teams in the league. The Vikings with 11 sacks, the Texans with 9 sacks. I thought it was interesting, Kevin O'Connell talking about Danielle Hunter this week at his media session.
I can't speak enough about just really from year 1 to year 2 is where Danielle and I really our relationship grew. You know, the early part of training camp, that whole situation, spent a lot of time with him daily leading into him feeling good about last year. And then kind of as him and I had envisioned together, him going out there and just being lights out and having the opportunity to go find, if it wasn't going to be here, I wanted him to find a great place to go play and continue kind of what he did in 2023. And I think he found a great home, literally in his hometown. And, you just see him playing. It's the same guy that's just an absolute game wrecker, disruptor, playing really hard, physical. How they play really fits Danielle's skill set and how he can impact the game. And then I think he's going to be an unbelievable kind of mentor in that room to a really, really talented football player on the other side, and Will Anderson. So it feels like I know we're going to get in the habit of talking about either interior or these pass rushers every week, but that's what this league is now. And it's a challenge every single week, and Danielle's has to be a major focal point in our game.
And in his return, Jeff, I want to ask you, him and Stephon Diggs, obviously major impacts on the Vikings franchise, beloved by a lot of the fans, and with Stephon Diggs in particular, very key, arguably franchise-defining moments. Do you think both those guys are seeing a warm welcome? Could it be split where maybe there's some jeers from some people towards a certain player, or do you think they both are welcomed back with open arms by Vikings fans?
I think they'll be welcomed back with open arms. I really do. And Danielle was always a class act. Stephon, not quite so much all the time, but I think that the fans appreciate the contributions those guys made. And you can't necessarily begrudge Stephon Diggs and how that all turned out, because who came back in return in that trade? Only Justin Jefferson.
Exactly. One of the most win-win trades for 2 franchises of all time.
Yeah, and the Vikings got a bigger win out of that one.
I would say so.
For sure. So you look ahead of the game and some of the keys to the game. The Vikings have to continue to run the ball well. They've really made a nice jump in the running game, which O'Connell talked about throughout the offseason. Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler was great the other day against the Niners. It's almost a 1A and 1B, as we talked about the other day. Not necessarily Chandler as a backup anymore. They're kind of splitting time, and Chandler very explosive. So I think that's a positive. Blake Brandel is playing well at left guard, more physical than Dalton Reisner. Reisner's on IR. He may come back at some point, and he could push Ed Ingram, but Brandel is playing well. The Vikings are going to want to have a higher time of possession in this game. They only had it for 25 minutes against the Niners. They want to keep CJ Stroud off the field and that prolific offense, especially with those three great receivers and Joe Mixon. If Mixon and Nico Collins play, we'll see about that. But those are all some of the keys to the game. Brian Flores talked this week about CJ Stroud, and really I think it's kind of interesting too, the different, shall we say, quarterback journeys that these two guys have had. I'm talking about Stroud and Sam Darnold. Stroud exploding on the scene, offensive rookie of the year, played great last year for Houston, but came to a team with a really good supporting cast. Sam Darnold, drafted by the Jets, 3rd overall in 2018, went to a team with a terrible supporting cast, and he's labeled a bust in New York, and he's out of there, goes to Carolina, goes to San Francisco. Now he's here with an excellent supporting cast, good offensive line, excellent receivers, good running game, and lo and behold, he's playing good, really good football. So, but Flores talked about Stroud. It's interesting to hear his thoughts on CJ Stroud and the Texans offense.
I mean, I think he's in, up and coming, rising, star. Big arm talent. It's hard to bring down. Pocket presence, command of the offense, quarterback mobility. But he keeps his eyes downfield and can make explosive plays down the field. They got a receiver after receiver after receiver after receiver. It's just Diggs, Dell, Nico Collins. I mean, it's just receiver after receiver. It's a great scheme. Similar to one we just saw last week with Bobby. It's certainly going to be a tough challenge. Good backs, tight ends are good, O-line's good. This is similar conversation to last week. Huge challenge.
CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, a really tough combination. Let's look at their touchdown pass against the Bears last week.
No targets to Stephon Diggs in that opening quarter. On 2nd and long. Stroud throws in the middle. It's Collins. Flag is down as Collins goes to the end zone for a touchdown.
It's a big physical guy, Nico Collins there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, they have kind of like that, like you hear the 2-headed dragon, but they kind of have the 3-headed dragon. Stephon Diggs, he's a great route runner. He kind of can flash and cut and whatnot. But you just saw right there, Nico Collins he's physical, he's aggressive, he can reel it in with the best of anybody. And then when you think, okay, we've got both those guys covered, Tank Dell is the other option in that offense as well. So the Vikings secondary is going to have their work cut out for them on Sunday. Yeah,
no doubt. And I think that it'll be a good test for the corners. And as we said, Stephon Gilmore, I think, has been a great addition to this team. I think he'll be tested maybe a little more in this game, perhaps. We'll see. Because the Texans still want to run the ball. They want to keep the Vikings offense off the field too. And that Houston offense, 9th ranked in the league, going against a Vikings defense that's been opportunistic this year with 4 turnovers. And so I think it's a lot of good things. And we talk about the Texans offensive line led by Laramie Tunsil, 4-time Pro Bowler. They're really good. And they've got some bookend tackles like the Vikings have with Darisaw and O'Neal in Tunsil and Howard, but even still, they've given up 7 sacks this year. So I think the Vikings are going to go after CJ, and we'll see how that all plays out. But before we check out a few more highlights and a few more interviews, let's talk about our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. It's time to take the field in an SUV that's designed to be unstoppable in every pursuit. That's the all-new 2024 GMC Acadia. From its reimagined interior to its bold, capable exterior, Acadia is suited up so you can make winning drives wherever they may lead. Whether it's at home or away, your team will enjoy the ride in comfort with 3 rows of spacious seating for 7. Plus, Acadia comes standard with other winning features like heated front seats, remote start, and a 2.5-liter engine with a GM estimated 328 horsepower. Or take yours to the championship level with available amenities like a panoramic sunroof or an off-road tuned suspension. Don't sit on the sidelines any longer. Test drive your new 2024 GMC Acadia today. Available now at your select Minnesota GMC dealers. As we talk a little bit more about keys to this game, and we've been talking about Danielle Hunter, let's look at one of Danielle's plays. It was actually a tackle for a loss in that Bear game. He also had 1.5 sacks in the game. Yeah. Part of the 7 sacks and 11 hits on Caleb Williams that we talked about. Here's Danielle Hunter making a play.
In the opener. Into Swift. Snowed under. Loss of 4 yards on that one. As off the corner, the man they acquired from Minnesota, Danielle Hunter, out there to make the play.
Weird to see him in a different uniform.
Just doesn't look right, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And it's just hard for a player to spend their entire career with one team, and especially when they become very high-priced, as Danielle did this year when he signed that, I think it was a $49 million deal over 2 years in Houston that the Vikings decided not to match. And so what did they do? They went and signed Jonathan Greenard for about $18 to $19 million a year, got Van Ginkel for about 10.
They got a guy back from the Texans, actually, Blake Cashman. They signed him in free agency.
That's right, and they draft Dallas Turner. So worked out, I think, okay for both sides.
Absolutely.
With both teams off to a really good start at 2-0. So as we said, Danielle Hunter doing his thing. The Vikings are going to be very challenged to handle him. Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw, Hunter does flip-flop from side to side, even though he's usually been more on the left side where he would face O'Neill more. But as we saw in that one play, he was coming from the right side. So I think Darrisaw can expect to see a little bit of him too. And Will Anderson Jr., the bookend edge rusher, was only defensive player of the year rookie of the year last year. So he's no slouch either. So, wow, it's going to be a challenge and exciting. But on the other side of the coin, the Texans have the same kind of problem to pass protect for CJ Stroud. The interesting part of the game, as we've talked before, really important from the Vikings standpoint to be able to get some pressure on Stroud. And one of the guys that's going to be chasing him, Pat Jones, has really been off to an amazing start for a guy that's been a backup player. Has 4 sacks in the first 2 games, ranked second in the NFL right now to Aiden Hutchinson. Here's one of his sacks last week.
1-6 on third down, the Niners, 3rd and 11. McKivitz the block. Up the middle they go. They got him. Pat Jones. Pat Jones. A 3rd sack this season.
And he's playing great. Just a great rotation they've got with actually 5 guys that they can rotate as edge rushers. We'll see if Dallas Turner is healthy enough to play this week.
And it's got to be so good when you can rotate between a good stable of guys like that and non-analytical, not deep dive or anything. But God, I do love when a D lineman just has a great sack celebration. I love the fishing rod. Let's reel him in. I mean, I remember the Jared Allen days of the Jack in the Box. Guess who's there? It's always a little more fun to have that personality and show off.
Yeah, there's no doubt. That's all true. And as we said, among those pass rushers, Jonathan Greenard, who came from Houston, and he was interviewed on Wednesday during his media session talking about facing his old team.
That's why it's so fun. I mean, it's been going against whether it's the past 4 years or 1 year or 2 years. We can really go in the real game, which is going to be all fun. And just compete is great, man. I think that they got good players on that side of the ball. We got some too, but looking forward to the competition for sure.
Blake said you go in motivated against your former team, but then you also have to really compete and not play hero mode. What's that balance?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I mean, I ain't going to sit here and lie and say I don't have this game like it's not going to be a game that I look forward to. Yeah, of course. It's a team I've been with for the past 4 years, but man, it's going to be fun just to be in an environment, for them to come to this environment. Being at the home game last week, man, that was amazing. U.S. Bank was crazy. So for them to come and see that and actually play in this environment where they come to our house, yeah, I'm ready for that one for sure. I'm knocking everybody out one more time. I'm ready.
And as Jonathan talked about, I think the crowd noise is a big factor in this game. No doubt. It definitely rattled Brock Purdy last week. CJ Stroud, he's used to facing crowd noise. He played at Ohio State. He's played in the NFL, playoff games. But it might be a little different facing that crowd noise with Brian Flores' defense when he doesn't know who's coming from where.
Exactly.
And I think that's going to be one of the really interesting kind of subplots to this game, to see how that plays out with the crowd noise. It enables the pass rushers to get off to a bigger jump. And I think that's a big advantage for the Vikings in this game.
Because it's not just also, like you said, it's crowd noise and it's the defense and everything, but it's not just crowd noise, Jeff. It's 2-0 Vikings fans crowd noise.
Yeah,
in a season
they're excited.
They've been told all offseason how they don't have a quarterback. They're not going to be able to be competitive. They're still finding things out. The defense is going to be figuring a lot of things and blah, blah, blah. They're a 2-0 team. This right now looks like they are off and running. Vikings fans kind of feel that belief. It's going to be loud at US Bank Stadium on Sunday.
Oh yeah, it's going to be crazy. And O'Connell called it phenomenal last week, and I think it's going to be similar this week, and very exciting. The running game, as I said, for both teams is really a key for the game. They want to be able to be balanced, protect their quarterback, and not let the pass rushers tee off. The screen game is going to be big for both teams. The Vikings have a couple guys that are really good in the screen game, and Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. Chandler, I thought, really played much better in week 2 against the Niners than he did in week 1 against the Giants, much less tentative. Here was one of his great plays where he ran for 25 yards.
It's cut to the lead, 21-13. Back to you guys.
Here we go again. 1st and 10. Galloping Chandler into the secondary. And hit by Jair Brown. A 25-yard run.
And he's a physical player. That was actually in the second quarter. And the next play was actually Sam Darnold's interception, which I said, why are you throwing the ball? Chandler had run it 3 straight times for about 50 yards. But play action was working in the game, as we saw with the Jefferson 97-yard catch and the Naylor touchdown. It was just a great play by Fred Warner on the interception of Darnold, and perhaps Sam won't throw it over the middle to an all-pro linebacker next time.
I mean, the thing about him, too, is, and I know we're talking the running game here, but with that, too, Fred Warner last week, this is a guy that played safety at points in high school and in college. So he's a linebacker, but boy, does he move and has the mind almost of a safety and can really see the field. But going back to the run game, Jeff, it's been incredible. And I'm happy to say that I think my original and initial beliefs about Ty Chandler have been wrong. I figured, okay, he's a change of pace guy. And, Aaron Jones, when he wants to maybe take a snap or two off, that's when you bring in Ty Chandler for a 2 or 3 yard up the middle. He'll be there just to give Aaron Jones a break. He's proven me wrong, and I think a lot of other critics as well, because he has shown that he can get to the outside, find that hole. He can break off, and like you said, he's physical. He'll absorb that hit. He loves he craves that contact, and he's going to get a couple more extra yards after feeling that initial contact. He's fighting for every yard out there.
Yeah, definitely. I think he and Aaron Jones are a great 1-2 combo. As I said, it's kind of 1A and 1B. Mm-hmm. I think they're both starter caliber running backs, and Jones definitely an upgrade over Alexander Madison last year, who was a good player his first few years when he backed up Dalvin Cook, not so much when he got the starting job and started dropping balls and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of excitement heading into the game. We want to get our picks, and we're going to go around the NFL. But first, we want to hear from our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the Sierra.
There are trucks, then there's the truck, GMC Sierra, with available features like the V8 engine, the ultimate luxury interior, and of course, the available world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra, not just any truck, the truck. GMC's continued commitment to professional-grade engineering is on full display at your local GMC dealer. Come take a test drive today and see for yourself. We are professional grade. GMC. Well-qualified buyers get 1.9% APR for 36 months on GMC Sierra light-duty models. See your local GMC dealer today. Monthly payment is $28.16 for every $1,000 you finance. Average example down payment 15%. Some customers will not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 9/30/24.
Here are a couple other interesting things to watch for on Sunday when the Vikings and Texans meet, battle of 2-0 teams. Justin Jefferson looks like he's on track to play with that quad injury. And Derek Stingley Jr. was the 3rd overall pick in the 2022 draft. They were teammates at LSU for the national championship season. And Stingley generally will follow the other team's best receiver. So there's a good chance that Jefferson could see a lot of Stingley and maybe a fair amount of single coverage, which we know that Justin Jefferson craves that.
Yes.
Even against an elite corner such as Stingley. So that's going to be really interesting to watch their matchup potentially. If Addison's out, then Jalen Nair is going to have to step up again, make big plays. Brandon Powell, a very underrated player for the team, had those big 3rd down receptions in the 49er game. I think they're still in okay shape, even if Addison can't play. I also think there's a decent chance Robert Tonyan may be activated this week with Nick Muse going on IR. And Tonyan is kind of that receiving tight end threat that TJ Hawkinson brings, and TJ is still on IR for 2 more weeks at least.
Yeah.
I'm sure they want to get him back for week 5 in London against the Jets. That would be the first time he can come back. But Tonyan could be a guy that could make some plays this week, potentially. A couple other things. Special teams battle is always important. The Vikings really performed well, had the block punt in the 49er game, had their coverage units cooking with Asamoah and Caleb Evans, Jay Ward, some really good coverage by those guys. They're going to need that to continue. Will Reichert off to a fantastic start in his career, 9 for 9 on kicking, including 3 for 3 field goals last week, had the game clincher. Kaimi Fairburn, remember that name, for the Houston Texans. He's the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. He made 3 50-yarders against the Bears, including a 59-yarder. So I'm sure he's looking forward to kicking inside U.S. Bank Stadium, which will be something to watch out for. And penalties, always a key. The Vikings have had 7 in each of the first 2 games. O'Connell is preaching to cut down on those penalties. So as we look ahead to our predictions, I think it's a really exciting matchup once again. I think it's going to be another very entertaining game as the 49er game was for the home fans. Houston's a rising power in the AFC. I think if the game was in Houston, I'd be picking Houston, but the game's here. And I think that crowd could have an impact. I think the Vikings have momentum. They're playing with confidence. Darnold's playing with confidence. The defense is. If Stroud goes off on them, if Collins goes off and Diggs and Dell, then it could be a long day. But I like the way the Vikings defense is playing right now. I like the way they're running the ball. I like Darnold's confidence and KOC's confidence in him. So I'm going to pick the Vikings in a close one, 27-24. I say Will Reichert kicks the walk-off winner. What do you think, AJ?
Everybody's going to hate me for this one, Jeff. I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I think I got to go the other way just because I know last week you beat the 49ers, but I do think in my mind that Brock Purdy is a less than quarterback to CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud is a little more built for this type of weekend, this type of matchup. I think just with that offense that they have, I know right now there are some deficiencies in the injury for the running game of Houston. Right now, I think based on the practicing, Cam Akers is probably their starting running back on Sunday, but I think the receiving core there is just too good to ignore. I'm going to say 28-24 Texans. It's going to be a close one and probably come right down to the wire. I just think that the Texans will edge them out in this matchup. Yeah,
and I think the truth of the matter is if they are able to split the next 2 games, talking about Houston here and at Green Bay, where Jordan Love may make a comeback. We'll see. He's talking about trying to play this week at Tennessee. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll play Malik Willis against his old team.
I think you're just asking to get re-injured at that point.
Yeah, I think so too. So to me, I think if they could split the next 2 games, they're in good shape. Looking around the NFL, in the division, Detroit, struggled last week. Jared Goff is struggling. They go to Arizona playing in the heat. I think that's an upset alert.
I think so, too.
But I'm going to take the Lions in that game. As I mentioned before, the Chargers at the Steelers. I like the Steelers' defense in that battle of 2-0s. And then you go forward with the Bears at Indianapolis. I like the Colts to get their first win in that game. I think the Packers, we'll see how they perform this week. I think the Packers are at Tennessee, as we said, and I do like the Packers to find a way to win that game. The Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, I think they'll take care of Kirk Cousins on Sunday night, even though Kirk had the big comeback in the last game. So it's going to be an interesting weekend. Vikings and Texans. We'll be back on Monday to break it all down and see if the Vikings get to 3-0. Who'da thunk it? But we will be back on Monday. And this has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Acadia and Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. This is Jeff Diamond with AJ Fredrickson. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday.